the lights dimmed, the sound of camera shutters echoed like a storm. And across social media, one headline dominated every timeline. American media ranks BTS members by popularity and fans are losing their minds. It wasn't just another poll. It was the ranking that dared to put numbers on 7 legends, 7 names that reshaped global music, broke every boundary, and turned pop culture into a phenomenon beyond borders. But this time, one name stood at the bottom, and that name was Jin. The news hit differently. Fans called it unfair. Critics said it was data-driven. But behind every number, there was a story, a reason, a misunderstanding, or maybe a twist no one saw coming. The report came from a group of US entertainment outlets, the kind that track streaming numbers, Google Trends, and media buzz. They looked at YouTube searches, Spotify streams, Instagram engagement, and even red carpet appearances. It was meant to be analytical, scientific even, but what it triggered was chaos. Suddenly, fandoms collided. Hashtags exploded. People weren't arguing about music anymore, they were fighting for pride. Because when it comes to BTS, popularity isn't just a number, it's emotion, memory, and love carved into the hearts of millions. Imagine waking up and seeing your bias ranked low, the instinctive defense rises. You quote, you repost, you argue. That's what happened when Jin's name appeared at the bottom of the list. "How can the worldwide handsome be lost?" shouted one fan on X. "This ranking is a joke," another screamed. But beyond the noise, some took a step back asking why this happened. Could it be timing? Could it be that Jin's mandatory military service affected his media presence? Or could it be that Western algorithms still don't understand the full emotional gravity of BTS fandom culture? The deeper you dive, the clearer it becomes this wasn't about who's loved more. It was about how the media measures love itself. The ranking was meant to celebrate, not divide. But instead, it sparked one of the most emotional fan reactions since BTS announced their group hiatus. American talk shows picked up the story. YouTubers made reaction videos. Even journalists who barely knew the difference between ARMY and ARMY Corps started Googling, "Why is Jin trending again?" The answer is complicated. Every BTS member shines differently. Jungkook's numbers are wild, his solo tracks break records overnight. Jimin dominates luxury brand influence and digital virality. Taehyung, with his fashion aura, pulls the artistic crowd. RM stands tall as the intellectual leader. Suga, the creative backbone. J-Hope, the sunshine performer. And Jin? Jin is the quiet flame, the one who doesn't always shout to be seen, yet when he moves, the world notices. That's what made this ranking so strange, so ironic. Because behind the algorithm, behind the cold data and flashy graphics, lies the truth. Popularity isn't always visible, but it's deeply felt. And sometimes, being lost in a chart doesn't mean you're forgotten, it means you're timeless. In this episode, we'll peel back every layer. We'll reveal who landed where, what made the US media rank them that way, and how each spot tells a story of fame, culture, and emotion. From the global streaming king to the silent soldier of grace, we'll travel through numbers, narratives, and nostalgia. And when we reach the end, you might just question what popularity really means. Because in the world of BTS, numbers fade, but their impact? Eternal. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. This is the American media BTS popularity ranking. Number 7, Jungkook, the unstoppable stream king. When the list first dropped, everyone assumed Jungkook would be sitting comfortably at the very top. After all, this is Jungkook, the man whose voice melted Spotify servers, whose solo 7 turned into a worldwide anthem overnight, and whose Calvin Klein campaigns literally stopped traffic on Times Square. But here's the twist that had every ARMY gasping. The American media placed him at number 7. The reaction was instant disbelief, anger, confusion. How can the most streamed Asian artist on Spotify be at the bottom? They asked. Yet, if you look deeper, there's more to this number than meets the eye. You see, the outlets behind the ranking, primarily entertainment analytics boards and cultural research sites like Variety Insight and Vulture Pulse, weren't measuring just fame. They measured presence. It's not about how many people listen to Jungkook's songs, but how many see him, hear him, and talk about him across multiple American media sectors at once. And right now, Jungkook, despite being one of the most powerful musical figures on Earth, has been quieter than usual. Since his massive solo year in 2024, the pop world has been hungry for the next move, but Jungkook himself pulled back, choosing quality over quantity, silence over overexposure. Ironically, that humility might have cost him points in the algorithm that loves chaos and constant noise. Still, every figure tied to Jungkook is absurdly high. 7 surpassed 1 billion streams faster than any K-pop track in history. His duet with Lato climbed American charts with the kind of velocity only Drake or The Weeknd usually enjoy. And when he performed at Global Citizen Festival 2023, you could feel the ground shake from Manhattan to Seoul. Reporters in the US call him the Asian Elvis of digital age. So why, despite all that, number 7? Because sometimes, Western media struggles to capture the emotional magnetism that fuels K-pop fandoms. They see numbers, not the nights armies stay awake just to stream, not the faces glowing under purple light during live concerts, not the thousands of TikTok edits where his laughter becomes comfort. They see data points, not devotion. There's also another factor, one the analysts quietly admitted in interviews: the visibility gap. Unlike American pop stars who thrive on paparazzi, Jungkook often avoids the spotlight when off stage. No random coffee shop photos, no drama headlines, no scandal bait. He lives like a ghost between stages, invisible yet omnipresent. For fans, that mystery adds to his legend. For algorithms, it's a deduction. The irony couldn't be sharper. The man who conquered global charts ranks lowest on a list meant to measure fame. But maybe that's the message. Jungkook doesn't chase fame, fame chases him. When the results spread, even Western journalists question the outcome. Rolling Stone Asia published a follow-up article titled "Jungkook, Too Big for the Metrics," pointing out that US audience tracking tools can't truly quantify cross-cultural impact. The editor wrote, "If we measured influence by how many people smile when his voice comes on, Jungkook would be untouchable." And that's the truth. Every tattoo on his arm, every eyebrow raised during a performance, becomes an instant meme, an emotional cue that connects millions who've never even met. But Jungkook's placement at number 7 did something unexpected. It united fans even more. Armies flooded comment sections with compilations, reminding the world that charts may rank, but they don't define. Within 24 hours, hashtags like #Justice for Jungkook and #Highs the main character trended worldwide. People began sharing personal stories, how his lyrics helped them through anxiety, how his smile became their source of light during lockdown. The list meant to compare ended up celebrating connection. So maybe number 7 isn't a loss. Maybe it's a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the calmest storm hides the deepest power. Jungkook's magic isn't in endless promotion, it's in authenticity. He doesn't shout, "Look at me," because the world already is. And if you think being ranked last shook him, you'd be wrong. Because while others chase clout, Jungkook's too busy building legacy. His next release could drop tomorrow, and in seconds, the charts would bend again. In the end, number 7 doesn't sound like a fall, it sounds like suspense, like the calm before another global explosion. Maybe the analysts got their math right, but they missed the heartbeat. Because when Jungkook walks on stage, popularity doesn't need ranking, it stands up and screams his name. Number 6, Jimin, the charisma in motion. Soft-spoken, radiant, and heartbreakingly human, that's how most people describe Park Jimin, the member whose smile could melt an audience before he even starts to dance. When the American media ranked BTS by popularity, Jimin's position at number 6 didn't sit quietly with fans either, because for years, he wasn't just an idol, he was a living symbol of grace and discipline. Yet, there it was data pointing to Jimin landing only one step above the bottom. How could that be? The man who turned the word serendipity into poetry itself, the Dior muse who redefined K-pop fashion in the West, was placed lower than anyone expected. But the deeper you dive, the more you see this isn't a downfall, it's a reflection of a complex, misunderstood kind of fame. See, when American outlets build rankings, they often weigh visibility more than artistry. They track how often a name trends, how often it appears in press mentions, brand partnerships, and digital virality. And Jimin's story in 2025 isn't just about numbers, it's about silence and substance. After his legendary Like Crazy era and that haunting collaboration with Taeyang in 2023, Jimin stepped back from the spotlight. He chose minimal social appearances, no overexposure, no endless endorsements. His priority? Self-growth and service. While others chased algorithms, Jimin enlisted literally serving his country with the same dedication he once gave to choreography. That's the kind of move data can't compute. What many in the US media forgot is that Jimin's popularity doesn't fade, it rests. His fans, millions spread from New York to Nagoya, don't move on, they wait. His voice isn't designed for streaming loops, it's designed for healing. Analysts may see a drop in media impressions, but what they're missing is the emotional imprint. When Jimin sings Promise, there's a trembling sincerity that stays in you long after the song ends. And if you've ever seen him on stage, eyes closed, body swaying like water, you know why this ranking feels almost ironic. Still, Jimin's cultural presence in America is massive, just subtler than the rest. His Dior ambassadorship rewrote the playbook for K-pop fashion diplomacy. Vogue U.S. called him the most elegant performer of his generation. When he attended the Met Gala 2024, social media didn't just trend his name, it froze it. The precision in his movement, the way he adjusts his tie, even the softness in his speech, all became memes, GIFs, art pieces. American fans don't just watch him, they study him. Yet, those details don't add up in a surface-level ranking. Because you can't quantify aura. Inside Korea, Jimin is revered like a national treasure. In the West, he's quietly becoming a cult figure, the kind of artist fashion students quote and vocal coaches reference. The American ranking didn't catch that nuance. To them, Jimin's subtlety reads as quietness, his mystery as absence. But ask anyone who's ever felt his energy at a concert, when he stretches his arm to the crowd during filter and smiles that impossible smile, and they'll tell you, silence isn't absence, it's anticipation. When the chart came out, ARMY responded instantly. Number Jimin Deserves Better trended for 2 straight days. People began posting memories their first time hearing his high notes, stories of meeting him at airports, fan projects built in his honor. Even Western journalists who once overlooked him began to notice. Billboard Insider ran a headline, "The Jimin Effect When Elegance Outsells Noise," and they were right. Because while others sell through hype, Jimin sells through sincerity. His impact stretches beyond music. University psychology professors in the US have cited his empathy as a modern case study in parasocial comfort, the rare ability of a celebrity to transmit calm through a screen. Meanwhile, art schools have referenced his Black Swan performance as a masterclass in kinetic storytelling. Those aren't popularity metrics, they're legacy footprints. So when the list placed Jimin at number 6, fans didn't see defeat, they saw misinterpretation. They saw a reminder that Western algorithms, built on clicks and chaos, will never truly decode someone whose value lies in stillness. Because Jimin doesn't chase visibility, he crafts intimacy. He doesn't need to trend, he needs 1 second of eye contact on stage, and the entire stadium stops breathing. Maybe that's the secret behind his charm. He isn't the loudest, the flashiest, or the most promoted, but he's the one who makes you feel. And when this ranking fades, when numbers turn to dust, the feeling he leaves will still echo gentle, beautiful, eternal. Number 5 volts, Taehyung, The Art of Mystery. If there's one BTS member who could walk into a crowded New York street and turn it into a runway in 5 seconds flat, it's Kim Taehyung, better known to the world as V. When the American media placed him at number 5 on the BTS popularity list, the internet practically combusted. Half the fans were furious, half were fascinated because how do you rank a man who's more myth than musician? V is not just a singer, he's a visual phenomenon, a living sculpture of calm chaos, a contradiction that somehow always makes sense. At first glance, his placement might seem like an injustice. He's the face of multiple global campaigns. Celine, Cartier, and Siminvest all fight for a sliver of his aura. He's adored by fashion critics, chased by photographers, and studied by cultural theorists who call his aesthetic the new language of soft masculinity. So how does someone like that land at number 5? The answer lies in the same paradox that defines him. Taehyung doesn't perform for attention, he performs around it. You see, Western media thrives on overexposure. It rewards chaos, controversy, and constant visibility. But V plays an entirely different game. He disappears. He vanishes between projects, leaves no trace, then reappears with something so mesmerizing that the world stops scrolling. When he dropped his solo project Layover, critics at the New York Times called it a cinematic whisper that hits louder than a scream. The album wasn't built for virality, it was built for timelessness. And that's precisely why he doesn't fit neatly into the American system of measurement. In the US, fandoms operate on constant updates, live streams, interviews, TikToks. But V's presence is curated like an art exhibit. Every post, every photograph, every movement is deliberate. When he posted a silent black and white clip of himself sitting beside a window last year, it gained 5 million likes without a single caption. That's the power of absence, something the ranking charts can't compute. Because how do you measure aura? How do you quantify a man who can walk into Paris Fashion Week wearing a beige overcoat and make it feel like a religious experience? Yet, for all his poise and quietness, Taehyung's reach in America runs deeper than most realize. When he joined the In the Soup Friendcation series, his personality warm, spontaneous, human captivated Western viewers who had only seen his idol facade. Even major Hollywood directors reportedly took interest in his on-camera presence. A Netflix executive once said, "If Taehyung acted in an American drama, the screen would have to adjust to him, not the other way around. That's how potent his charisma is, it bends the medium." And still, number 5. It feels wrong and yet poetic. Because V's relationship with fame has always been strange, he doesn't chase it, he sculpts it. He once said, "I don't want to be remembered as popular, I want to be remembered as honest." That line explains everything. While others seek to dominate the spotlight, Taehyung builds a world where beauty and truth quietly coexist. His fans don't just admire him, they orbit him like satellites around an emotional Sunday. The American ranking might have looked only at engagement metrics and streaming visibility, but it missed what makes V, V. It's the stillness in his gaze, the melancholy wrapped in his laughter, the delicate balance between mystery and warmth. It's the reason photographers in Vogue call him the man with eyes that narrate their own story. And when you look into them, you understand this isn't just popularity, it's presence. Fans across the globe didn't take the number 5 ranking lightly. Number Taehyung as the moment trended worldwide within hours. People began flooding social media with clips of him performing Singularity, reminding everyone that a single frame of his can outlast entire music trends. American journalists even debated the ranking on morning talk shows. One host admitted, "Maybe he's not the most visible, but he's the one who never fades from memory." That's it, the art of mystery. V's fame doesn't scream, it lingers. It doesn't crash like a wave, it flows like smoke. And that's something no algorithm, no ranking, no Western chart can ever fully capture. Because Taehyung isn't meant to be categorized, he's meant to be felt. Maybe number 5 isn't a misplacement. Maybe it's the most Taehyung position of all, somewhere between seen and unseen, between idol and idea. Because the truth is, V doesn't live inside rankings. Rankings live inside his silhouette. Number 4, RM, the mind behind the movement. He doesn't need the loudest stage lights or the flashiest brands. Because for Kim Namjoon RM, the leader of BTS, influence has never been about being seen, but about being understood. When American media placed him at number 4, the reaction was mixed. Some said it was well-deserved. Others claimed it was too low for someone who literally built the foundation of the group's voice. But once you look closer, it's clear RM's ranking isn't about popularity, it's about philosophy. It's about how a thinker fits inside an industry obsessed with spectacle. To the Western world, RM is that rare pop figure who sounds more like a TED speaker than a celebrity. He's the one who can quote Nietzsche in one breath and freestyle over an underground beat in the next. His solo album Indigo wasn't just music, it was a diary disguised as art. American critics from Pitchfork and Rolling Stone praised it for its depth and texture, calling it the most introspective K-pop record ever produced. Yet, in the metrics that ranked BTS's popularity, social virality, click engagement, tabloid mentions reflection doesn't always translate. The system measures noise, not nuance, and RM has always been nuance personified. When you see him on American television, there's an almost cinematic calm. Whether he's addressing the United Nations or cracking a joke on The Late Show, RM carries himself like a man who already knows he represents more than music. He's the diplomat, the translator, the bridge between East and West. But what happens when the bridge stands taller than the spotlight itself? Western media, obsessed with instant visibility, often misses his quiet revolutions. They don't see the midnight walks through Seoul's art districts, or the essays he posts about loneliness and identity, or the museum visits where he sketches inspiration into his lyrics. They don't realize that, while others chase headlines, RM writes history. Still, his placement at number 4 is fascinating because it shows just how much substance can still command attention in a culture addicted to flash. The analytics show it. American podcasts frequently cite RM's interviews as intellectual gold. University courses from California to London have referenced his leadership model when studying modern collectivism. Even Forbes once published a feature titled, "How BTS's RM Redefined Global Management." He's not the most searched, but he's the most quoted. Not the loudest, but the most trusted. What fans love about him is that paradox: he's a scholar trapped in a pop idol's body. His influence moves differently. When Jungkook dominates Spotify and Jimin melts fashion runways, RM reshapes thought. His lyric, "The dawn right before the sun rises is the darkest," became a mantra across Reddit, therapy circles, and even motivational speeches. In 2023, when the Indigo tour reached Los Angeles, Western fans described the concert not as a performance, but as a live journal reading backed by bass. That's RM, the poet who made existentialism trend on TikTok. And yet, for all the critical praise, RM himself would likely laugh at this ranking. He once said, "I don't lead BTS, we lead together." That humility disarms every notion of hierarchy. So when the US list placed him in the middle, fans didn't argue, they reflected, because in many ways, he is the middle. the axis that keeps the group's gravity intact. Without him, the other stars might shine in different directions. American fans see it too. When he walks on a stage, you can sense the energy shift like the room itself inhales. His English flows effortlessly, but it's his empathy that translates. The Western media often describes him as the spokesperson of a generation, but among ARMY, he's something else entirely, the voice that never lies. He's the person you quote when you're lost, the one whose wisdom feels personal, as if he's talking to you alone. So maybe number 4 isn't a rank. Maybe it's a reflection point, the exact center where intellect meets emotion, where leadership turns into legacy. Because without RM's words, BTS wouldn't just lose a leader, they'd lose their language. And the fact that American outlets even recognize his influence enough to place him this high shows one thing: even a data-driven world can't ignore a mind that moves hearts. Namjoon's story is proof that the quietest voices can still shake the loudest stages. And while algorithms can track numbers, they'll never quantify meaning. Because popularity fades with trends, but philosophy lasts forever. Number 3, Suga, the shadow and the storm. Every great story has its mystery, every empire its architect, and every melody its silence. For BTS, that silence often belongs to Minyoongi Suga. When the American media placed him at number 3, fans around the world didn't argue, they nodded. Because even if you don't see him in every interview or paparazzi lens, you feel his presence in everything BTS has ever touched. He's the producer, the thinker, the man who turns pain into rhythm and vulnerability into revolution. To Western audiences, Suga's rise has been quietly fascinating. He isn't your typical global celebrity. No flashy quotes, no unnecessary drama, no endless brand campaigns. And yet, he's everywhere. His fingerprints are on nearly every hit song BTS has released, from the raw confession of the last to the anthem of survival that is Life Goes On. American critics from Billboard and The Guardian have called him the emotional compass of BTS. That's why his ranking feels earned, not gifted. Because when Suga creates, the world listens, even when they don't realize it's him they're hearing. In 2023, when his solo tour under the name August D swept through the US, it wasn't just a concert, it was therapy wrapped in fire. Thousands of fans packed into arenas not to scream, but to heal. He told stories about mental health, fame, and identity that most pop stars would never dare touch. And when he stood on that stage, drenched in sweat, whispering, "People love to talk, but I keep walking," you could hear a stadium fall silent. That's power not from volume, but from truth. Western journalists often describe Suga as the most American-minded BTS member, not because of his accent, but because of his grit. He built himself from nothing. Before BTS, he was producing beats in a cramped room in Daegu, selling songs to underground rappers for a few dollars. Today, he's one of the most respected producers in the world, working with artists like Halsey, Max, and Coldplay. When The New Yorker profiled him in 2024, the writer described his eyes as the calm before a hurricane. That's Yoongi calm, calculating, creative, the storm disguised as a whisper. And still, there's a mystery. Suga doesn't live in the spotlight, he visits it. He speaks when it matters, disappears when it doesn't. To Western media obsessed with content overload, that restraint is confusing. But to those who understand artistry, it's genius. Because Suga doesn't post to be seen, he posts to say something. Every message has weight, every lyric has intent. In a world drowning in noise, his silence is symphonic. The American ranking placed him high for a reason. The analytics behind the report highlighted his individual brand power, the rare ability to sell out arenas without group promotion. Even after his shoulder surgery and temporary hiatus, his return was met with record-breaking sales for his solo album D-Day. Fans from Los Angeles to London queued overnight to see him live, not for flashy performances, but for raw honesty. That honesty resonates deeply in Western culture, where vulnerability is now celebrated as strength. But what really cements Suga's place in this ranking isn't just his skill, it's his evolution. He's the man who once rapped about hating fame, now using that same fame to heal others. The boy who feared being forgotten became the artist no one can ignore. His dual identity, Suga and August D, symbolizes every artist's inner war between light and shadow. And, when he performs both personas on stage, you realize why he's number 3. He embodies contradiction, pain and peace, rage and reflection, ego and empathy. American critics love to analyze him. NPR called him a philosopher trapped in a beatmaker's body. The Atlantic compared his writing to Leonard Cohen's dark, spiritual, but relentlessly human. Even Eminem's former producer once mentioned him in an interview, saying, "That kid's got hunger. He's not chasing charts, he's chasing truth." Fans know this too. Every lyric of Amygdala, or People P-Tain 2, feels like an unfiltered confession whispered straight to the listener's heart. When he stands behind his mic, head slightly bowed, eyes closed, it's like watching someone open their soul in front of millions. That's not performance, that's surrender. So yes, number 3 makes sense. Because Suga doesn't crave the top, he creates the top. Without him, BTS's sound wouldn't breathe the same. Without his storm, the sunshine wouldn't glow as bright. He's the reason their music cuts deeper than pop, because beneath the beats lies a heartbeat, and that heartbeat is his. Maybe that's what Western media finally understood, that popularity isn't just about visibility, it's about vulnerability. And no one embodies that better than Suga, the man who turned his scars into sound, his shadows into spotlight, and his pain into poetry. Number 2, Jules Hope, the light that never fades. If BTS were a galaxy, J-Hope would be its sun, radiant, consistent, impossible to ignore. When the American media ranked the members by popularity, placing him at number 2, it didn't surprise anyone who's ever seen him move, smile, or simply walk into a room. Because J-Hope isn't just energy, he is energy. He's the pulse that keeps the world dancing, the positivity that cuts through chaos, and the performer whose very existence feels like hope personified. To the Western audience, J-Hope's transformation from an underdog rapper to a cultural ambassador is legendary. He's the bridge between Korean rhythm and American swagger, a dancer whose precision rivals professionals, and a musician who can shift from trap beats to funk grooves without missing a breath. When his solo album Jack in the Box dropped, critics in Billboard, NME, and Rolling Stone couldn't stop talking. A masterpiece of self-expression, one called it. A confrontation between light and dark, executed by someone who finally learned to love both sides of himself. That's the paradox of J-Hope. He shines so bright that people often forget the shadows he came from. Before fame, he was just Jung Ho-seok from Gwangju, dancing on cracked studio floors, surviving on passion and little else. He once said, "I became J-Hope because I wanted to be someone's reason to smile." And that's exactly what he became, not just for ARMY, but for the world. When he first stepped onto the stage at Lollapalooza 2022 as the first Korean headliner in history, the crowd didn't just cheer, they roared like the earth itself was responding. American music journalists compared his set to watching lightning choreographed. He brought K-pop energy to a Western stage and left with something bigger: respect. That night marked a cultural shift. It wasn't about a Korean artist performing in America, it was about a global artist owning it. And still, despite his brilliance, J-Hope's fame in Western media works differently. He's not as tabloid-driven as Jungkook, not as mysterious as Taehyung, not as philosophical as RM. He's alive. Every frame, every gesture, every grin feels cinematic. His laugh, the kind that seems to disinfect sadness, has become iconic among fans. When he entered military service in early 2024, fans in Los Angeles and New York organized Sunshine Nights, events filled with his songs, choreographies, and handwritten notes. No other member had that kind of synchronized global send-off. That's not fandom, that's faith. American analysts who contributed to the ranking noted something called emotional recall value, the likelihood that a person's image evokes an instant feeling in the viewer. J-Hope scored highest among all BTS members. That means when people see him, they don't just remember his name, they feel him. His warmth transcends translation, his stage presence dissolves cultural boundaries. He doesn't need subtitles, he speaks fluent joy. But make no mistake, J-Hope isn't just sunshine, he's a storm that learned how to smile. His lyrics often hide quiet struggles, the fear of fading, the weight of perfection, the constant demand to stay bright in a dimming world. His song, Arson, shocked many Western listeners for its raw aggression. It wasn't just a track, it was an exorcism of expectations. That moment revealed the other side of the light, the fire that keeps it burning. In 2025, Time magazine called him the global symbol of perseverance. That same year, Esquire described him as a once-in-a-generation performer who turns exhaustion into inspiration. Even US pop stars like Becky G, his collaborator and close friend, praised his professionalism. "He's the kindest person in every room," she said, "but also the hardest working. It's rare in showbiz to find both kindness and consistency. J-Hope embodies both effortlessly." When the ranking came out, fans weren't angry, they celebrated. Number Hope on top trended globally, with fans sharing clips of his freestyle rehearsals, charity donations, and unforgettable smile. In the end, it didn't matter if he was number 2 or number 1, because his presence feels infinite. He's the light that outlasts comparison, the kind of artist who doesn't fade even when the music stops. Maybe that's why he's here, at number 2, not as the runner-up, but as the reminder that joy itself can be revolutionary. Because in a world drowning in cynicism, J-Hope remains pure motion, pure meaning, pure hope. And when the spotlight dims and silence returns, there's one thing everyone agrees on: J-Hope doesn't just perform light, he is the light. Number 1, Jin, the heart that holds them all. The internet couldn't believe it. When the American media's BTS popularity ranking finally dropped its final reveal, Jin at number 1, the last name to be shown, the supposed lowest-ranked member, the reaction was a tidal wave of disbelief and emotion. Headlines screamed, "Jin BTS ranked last," as if the world had forgotten who he truly was. But as the dust settled, something unexpected happened. People started listening. They started asking why the man who was once the face of worldwide handsome, the soldier of smiles, the emotional anchor of the group, could ever be placed at the bottom of anything. And that's where the story begins, not at the top of the list, but at the bottom of a misunderstanding. Because here's the truth: rankings can't measure heart. They can't calculate the weight of laughter, the sound of comfort, or the calm of sincerity. And that's exactly what Kim Seokjin embodies. While others dominated the headlines, Jin became something rarer, beloved. Not in flashes or algorithms, but in silence, in warmth, in the kind of admiration that doesn't trend for a day, it lasts for years. The American report based its data on visibility metrics, solo activities, brand deals, Western media appearances, digital searches. And in those categories, Jin's score was lower not because he lacked fame, but because he chose presence over noise. Since 2022, his career followed a different rhythm. He wasn't chasing cameras or spotlight circuits. He was fulfilling duty, his military service, his personal promise, his quiet discipline. While others were seen, Jin was remembered. That's what the analysts missed. They were counting moments, not meanings. When he returned from service in 2024, the entire world stopped. CNN called it the most celebrated military discharge in South Korea's entertainment history. Crowds flooded Incheon Airport. Reporters compared the atmosphere to a royal homecoming. His simple wave, his shy smile, they became symbols of patience rewarded. And in that moment, even the Western outlets who once questioned his rank realized they'd been watching the story backward. Jin wasn't last, he was the constant. The unshakable foundation that held the world's biggest band together through storms, silence, and separation. Think about it: every BTS performance, no matter how massive, ends with Jin's laughter echoing behind the mic. Every tearful speech has him standing tall, clapping first. Even during the group's hiatus, his presence lingered not through posts or appearances, but through memory. Armies say, "When I think of home, I think of Jin." That isn't fame, that's legacy. Western critics have slowly started to catch up. Rolling Stone US called him the emotional spine of BTS. The Washington Post described his solo single, The Astronaut, as a lullaby for the world. In that track, co-written with Coldplay, Jin's voice floats like starlight, steady, timeless, and heartbreakingly human. Even Chris Martin himself said during an interview, "Jin has the gentlest soul I've ever met. When he sings, you remember how beautiful humanity can sound." And that's the thing: Jin doesn't fight for popularity. He redefines it. He's not viral, he's vital. His kindness has become lore within the entertainment industry. Staff members talk about how he stays behind after rehearsals just to thank every crew member individually. Photographers describe him as the easiest perfection, someone who doesn't pose, he exists. When he joined Hybe's anniversary dinner post-service, journalists noted that the room's energy shifted the moment he entered, not louder, just lighter. The irony is that the same traits that placed him last on paper are the ones that make him first in people's hearts. Western algorithms can't comprehend empathy, they can't weigh laughter shared off camera, or the sincerity in a handwritten letter to fans. Yet that's what Jin has given the world: sincerity as stardom. Even American late-night hosts noticed it. When clips of him at Coldplay's concert circulated again in 2025, the comment sections were filled with confessions. "I wasn't even an army, but this man makes me cry. There's something about Jin, you just believe him. That's influence beyond metrics. That's humanity breaking through entertainment." And maybe that's why the story feels poetic. Jin, who was called last, represents the truth behind every ranking, that numbers fade, but kindness doesn't. Because what good is being first in charts if you're last in compassion? What power is there in fame without grace? Jin's journey answers those questions without ever saying a word. So yes, the American media placed him last. But history will place him somewhere else entirely at the center. The heart that holds them all. The laughter that stitched 7 dreams together. The reminder that being underrated is sometimes just another word for being eternal. And as the final note of this ranking fades, one truth remains. Jin may stand quietly at the end of every list, But somehow, he's always the one the world remembers first.